Hi everyone. Today we'll be talking about the Ferengi Rules of Acquisition. Now this was requested by one of my patrons, so I'm trying to do some videos that are specific to the requests I get from patrons. So without further ado, here are the original masters / sculptures of the Rules of Acquisition. Now we're going to start with the back plate. The back plate is a piece of 1/2-inch acrylic sheet that has had all of these 40 thousandths thick styrene planktons put onto it. Now, I'm going to turn this over so that you can see that this is a piece of clear acrylic. And you can see the white styrene pieces underneath it. In fact, if you look closely enough, you may even see on some corners of those white pieces, there's blue or pink, and that's silicone from when this was molded. Now, these posts, as you see them here, whether you can see them or not, I don't know. I'll turn it sideways. These posts right here are actually brass posts that are used for like doing binding and stuff like that for office. What this was for actually holding the pages to the book in place. Now you'll notice here that there are also these three holes here as well, and there's 2 sets of them. Now those holes actually held the brass hinge that would be placed in between this and would be flush to the outside edge. Now this hinge is not something you can buy. You actually have to manufacture the hinge. The hinge was a piece of L-stock brass with a 1/4-inch square solid stock brass attached to that through screws going from the L bracket into the brass square stock. And it was also soldered. The ends of that brass square stock, there were holes on each side drilled in to accommodate the hinge, the secondary hinge part, which was on this side. So what you would do with these 3 holes is these were already in place, because we would actually put threaded inserts into the castings as well as these posts into the mold before we poured a copy of it. This allowed us to actually make sure that these were not going to pull out. So you would put when you're molding this, you would take a threaded rod and just stick it in there as a holder for when you do this side of the mold. So when you took this side of the mold off, you take the master out and you're putting it back together, you're going to take these inserts, these inserts that go in here, and these 2 brass posts, and stick them actually in the mold. Those threaded rods will go back into the silicone mold, and you'll put on threaded inserts or nuts, as some people would use. And what that does is once you've cast this part, you now have these pieces encapsulated. They can't come out of the resin. So it makes it stronger. Now, on this particular one, we didn't just do threaded inserts though by themselves. We took threaded inserts that were made out of brass, and we took a strip of brass and soldered those brass inserts to the strip, so that when it was cast in place, there's no way any one of those 3 screws could be pulled out of the casting. Whereas if it was just a standard threaded insert, which is just round with some knurling on it, there is a possibility it could be pulled out, because not only is this hinge very heavy, so is the paper, and so is the resin castings of these pieces. That's the back of it. So the front of it has a compound curvature across the entire thing here. as well as the inset detail here. So this was actually sculpted in Jem'Hadar, which I've discussed before in other videos, which is a tooling wood. And then all of these plantons, all of them, even these little dinky tiny ones, this was all 40 thousandths hand-cut styrene strips glued to the surface. And as you can see, there's a lot of them. The insert here with the Ferengi symbol was a piece of 40,000 styrene once again, and all of that detail put onto it. This hole was cut out of the Jem'Hadar piece and then backfilled with another piece of Jem'Hadar that was already at the correct height to insert that piece. So I am going to turn this over now. So on this side, you can see that there are sets of screws, holes here, which once again had threaded inserts soldered to a piece of brass that would be cast embedded into this side of the rules of acquisition. Now, a lot of people always, when they look at this, point at this little nub right here. Well, this little nub right here is simply here because that's our injection point for casting these. So we would have, in a mold, we would take this and turn it at an angle like that, this being the bottom, this being the top, and we would have a bleeder along this top edge venting to the outside world out of the mold. So we had a tube in the silicone that would come all the way over to this point, and when we were casting these, we would simply get a ginormous syringe, or if you had a casting gun, you would then put it into the filler hole, which is once again a tube that would inject resin and fill this up. Once that was done, you would cut off the bleeder here. You would snap this off, sand it flat, and you would have your inserts in place, and you would be ready for painting, and you would be ready for putting your hinges on. Now the hinge, the secondary part of the hinge here and here are simply part of that same brass angle that was made for the main hinge piece here, were also used here. You would screw one of the flats this way, and it would come up this way to go into the screw on the 1/4-inch brass. So you would screw these tails that are sticking up into those two pieces. So it would be a complete hinge. And it would be strong enough that you can actually open the book and everything else. Now, the thing about this is you really couldn't open the book any farther than a certain point because of how this back edge hits the hinge base here. So I believe its maximum was being almost a little past 90 degrees when it opened. So the other thing about this is there were only 4 pages that repeated over and over and over and over in the book of acquisitions. There weren't all those pages. It was 4 design pages that were done over and over and over again on some very nice heavy parchment. I believe there is at least 100, if not 200 pages in the book itself, but only 4 repeating pages. So I think that actually is about all there is to really know about the Book of Acquisitions, besides the fact that it was also hand wood grained in paint. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. If you have any questions, please put them down in the comments below. If you feel so inclined, please become a patron to help me make these videos. Thank you.